This podcast is sponsored by Nutricon. You can use the code 2022BODY and save 20% off.
Have you ever met Miss Lindy? She's a gal with the bright red hair.
What's happening, guys? Welcome to a new episode of Just the Radio. His brother has been on. His brother is the muscular one. Now we interview the fit one, the endurance athlete, the triathlete, Haydn Corke. Bro, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Jesse.
Of course, and you do look very similar, and more so actually when you had your beard, because I was looking on Instagram, and when you had that beard, obviously similar to what Dev had, then obviously you could see the similarity a lot more.
Patchy ginger, just patchy ginger. that's the only similarity. Eh?
Can you pull that mic just a bit up?
Just
There we go. Yeah, perfect.
yeah. He I think we looked alike up until he was in matric, and then he carried on growing, and I think I stopped growing when I was in grade 9. So that's when the similarity stopped.
Yeah.
We try to.
You're older.
Yeah, I'm older by a fair margin.
Okay.
And I gymmed a lot with him. I tried to show him the ropes, and then he started showing me the ropes when he was in about grade 9.
In terms of gym.
Then
We move over to endurance, and then obviously you're the one that knows far more.
Yeah.
So do you want to, tell us your claim to fame in terms of endurance and the endeavors that you have gone into since school, and, the cycling, the running, the swimming, all of that obviously encompasses in a triathlon?
So it all started in about 2014. 2014. A mate of mine, Brett Hallam, he shout out in Dubai. He encouraged me to do a triathlon with him. It was like a sprint. I think it involved a 300-meter swim, a 3K mountain bike, and a 1K run or something silly. And I thought, what's that? I play water polo every weekend. I should be able to do that. And it shattered me. But I think, like all guys, as soon as you get broken by something, you want to have another go at it. So had another go at what's called a 5150, an Olympic distance, which is kind of the standard distance in a triathlon. I did that. I didn't do that with him, but we kind of kept challenging each other to do more triathlons, and eventually I did my first half Ironman in 2015, and I just kind of trained myself. I didn't do much cycling beforehand. Running's always been a weak point of mine, but swimming's been a strong point. And he had done a few half Ironman, and then I did my first one. It took me 6.5 hours, which is shit. It's not great if you're trying to be competitive, but that's not saying anything to the beginners out there. Everyone starts somewhere, and 6.5 hours was the best I could do. And ever since then, I think I've done about 10 or 11 other half Ironman, and just getting better and better.
What's your fastest time now?
I think it's somewhere under 4:30. It's nothing to brag about when you're racing against pros or anything, or the top age groupers even. But my distance has always been the Olympic distance, which is it's a 1.5K swim, a 40K bike, and a 10K run. And it's short and sharp. You're home to have a braai before 11 a.m. and it's not a whole weekend thing. But as soon as you step into the half Ironman, you have to book hotels, and it's a 3-day event, really, because there's the whole preparation leading up to it, the day on the Sunday where afterwards you are broken. You can't do anything with yourself afterwards, and then the next day you come home, and it's generally advised to take leave from work the next day. It's quite the sport's growing in the country. It's becoming very, very popular. It's never going to be like a cricket or a football, but it's getting there. It's gaining traction.
And obviously when you did that little sprint, that first little mini triathlon that you did, how did you go about building endurance? Because I've recently started cycling. I've recently started running a lot more. What's your best? Because obviously you're a coach at Maverick Athletics.
Yeah.
And then obviously you mentioned the brand on your cap, and what is that? Something similar.
So no, this is Maverick Athletic Club, started by Travis Johnston, who, I mean, he's like a household name in SA triathlon. He's got 8 national titles. He was a pro for 15 years or so. He was on the ITU circuit, which is the International Triathlon Union. It's as good as you get, kind of just shy of the Olympics. And he started this in September 2020. Yeah, September 2020. So we've been going just over a year. I'm one of his coaches. There are 6 or 7 other coaches around the country. And we've got a team, I would say about 200 people in the team.
And are you coaching like just triathletes, or could it just be a random runner that joins and you coach them just on the running?
Anyone can join, hey. So we've got mainly triathletes underneath me. I've got about 30 athletes that I coach. We've got runners, though, like long distance runners, guys going for gold at the Comrades, which is no small feat. Marathon
just
runners.
Finishing the Comrades.
Just finishing, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't even dream of entering the Comrades. I think it's silly. We have cyclists and some just swimmers and people just looking to stay fit. But it's quite a club to join to just stay fit, I would say. We've got all sorts of group sessions, running group sessions and riding and swimming. But it's more of a social club when you all come together.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
And, going back to needing to improve to be able to, do these further distances, how did you, initially start? Was there, confusion in how to attack your training to obviously build that endurance? Because, I mean, obviously you say you're doing the shorter distances than like what a half Ironman is, the Olympic distances. But how do you go about building that endurance within, the 3 sporting codes?
I think when you start by yourself, your immediate thing is, well, to go as long and as hard as possible, which is, it's probably the worst thing to do. It's like, if we relate it to what my brother does, it's like trying to do your max rep 12 times as your set and trying to repeat that 3 times then. And that's not how you build. So what I was doing was I would try and swim maybe 2Ks in the pool and then get out and go hop on the bike at gym. And you end up just breaking yourself. You tire your body out and you really want to just build it nice and slowly. If you feel like you can carry on at the end of a session, you're probably doing the right amount. As soon as people are overdoing it, they get injured, they plateau. They get to a point where they're pushing so hard in those easy sessions where when it comes to the hard session, you can't push hard enough. And so you just kind of get to this middle tempo ground, and that's where your fitness gets to, and you just plateau. So, I mean, that's what I was doing, and I ended up injured all the time. I had shin splints and hammy issues, and I mean, the works, and everyone will have different issues. And people are often like, when they join, they say, cool, I can't run as much because I have this knee issue. And I'll give them 2 runs that week and they'll say, are you giving me enough running to do? I'll say, well, that's exactly it. You can improve at so many different angles in triathlon. So we kind of diversify that program with, for a beginner, if you go with 8 hours of training a week, for someone that works a full-time job or has kids, I mean, 8 hours is a decent amount of training for a half Ironman even, where you get a 45-minute session in on a Monday, whether it be a swim or a run. It gives you enough time to recover for the next day, where you maybe do an hour session on the bike. And a lot of it is just aerobic, meaning like your zone 2 heart rate. It's conversational pace. And that's really where endurance comes in over speed work and strength.
How will you build that up though? Let's say, someone wants to do a 21K run. And, you start off saying, okay, well, I'm giving you 4 runs a week or 3 runs a week, whatever it may be. Run 3Ks in zone 2. How do you, what is the correct way? Let's say myself now. Obviously, I'm relatively experienced, but not experienced in running. Obviously played rugby, but I mean, I'm not experienced in running. Let's say I come to you, I want to do a 21K in 12 weeks time? Or what's a good time period to prepare?
12 weeks is perfect. So what I would do is I would give you one speed session a week and a hill session to do strength. So instead of sitting in gym and just working on your leg strength, we incorporate that into a running session. So now the hills is exactly that. It's hard up and easy down to bring your heart rate down again. And you do that in and amongst the aerobic running. So let's call it an hour session. So I would give you an hour speed work session, and 20 minutes of that is just aerobic, warming up, getting some miles in your legs, and then a specific speed session. One of our favorites is 20 by 400s. So you'll do a 400 meter. If you're doing it on a minute 20, you have 40 seconds rest until the 2-minute mark, and you go again. And so it's on a specific time, you're going at a specific pace, and that's quite a fast end for a fast age grouper or amateur. So we'll do 20 of those, and then that's your speed set for the week. And then on the Friday, we can do hills, which is your strength incorporated, and on a Sunday, you do a long run, be it between an hour and an hour and a half. Now, for someone starting out, those speed sessions I would bring down to 45 minutes just in the beginning, because you don't want to shock the body too much. On the Friday, again, 45 to 50 minutes, and your long run on Sunday can be an hour. Now, it doesn't matter how far you get in that hour. It could just be 6Ks because you're going at your pace. Now, the second week, now that's 3 runs for the 1 week. And there isn't a hell of a lot of aerobic stuff in that first week. But now we go into the second week. On the Monday or the Tuesday, I would throw in a 40-minute aerobic run, your speed session again on the Wednesday, your hill again on the Friday, and on the Sunday, if we've gone an hour, we could do an hour again, or we could go an hour and 10 minutes. And you slowly progress in 3 weeks up, 1 week of recovery to kind of let your body come down and normalize again.
I think that might be people's biggest mistake when starting out in cycling, running, swimming, whatever, is I've got a 21K race, or I've got mid-mile, whatever. I need to be able to swim 1.6 Ks every time I swim.
Yeah.
Or I need to be able to swim 2 Ks so that when I do the race, I can do the 1.6. Yeah. And that's obviously people's biggest mistake, starting out, and then they realize that.
See, so if you're training for a 21K run, you don't need to do a 21K run every time you run. Like even every long run, you don't need to do a 21K run. The stronger and the fitter you get, the easier a 21K run will be to just run easily. And you'll be able to run 25, 30Ks as a long run then. But, that's when you've reached a specific point, years in of training. And the reason I say years is because your body takes a long time to adapt. I don't know your background in running. I don't know if you have any old injuries, if your job is very stressful, because all these things play a part. If you have a relatively easy job, and I say easy, I mean like physically, where you're at a desk all day, your legs are just sedentary, and you're not moving around a lot, and everything becomes stiff during the day. So we kind of take that all into we take it all into account before we give a program out.
And you yourself, you said the running was your weak point.
Yeah.
For me personally, I don't like swimming. So swimming is my weak point. Is there, a particular field that you've seen or heard of other athletes saying like that's their weak point? Is there generally one that people do find more difficult? That maybe like the vast majority, or I think 51% find more difficult?
I think the majority of triathletes specifically would find swimming as the hardest one to get good at. For a lot of people, especially in South Africa, the triathlon events, the majority of them, the open water is at the coast, like the Durban Ironman or the PE Ironman. You've got rough waters. A lot of the swims get shortened or cancelled often, and I think it's because of the growing pressure that people have put onto Ironman to say, listen, the swim conditions are really tough, because we've got some guys that are Durban-based. Another SA household name is Glenn Gore, and he's a swimmer, And I mean, any race that Glenn has organized, that swim will not be shortened because it's pretty much man up and get in the water. You're here to do a triathlon. So I would say swimming's the least favorite for most people. But running's definitely a tough one. It's the last thing, it's the last discipline in a race. You've been on your, you've been on a bike for a couple of hours. You get off the bike. If you haven't had your bike set up correctly, different muscles seize, your hips are closed for so long, and then you're trying to run normally all of a sudden, and you often start running at the pace that you normally train at. These are for like uncoached, inexperienced people, so they go out hot out of the transition, and they end up walking soon after because you're not conditioned enough. And cycling is, I would say, if you've got the equipment, if you've got the money to get into cycling, cycling's very easy to improve on. It's easy to just improve your equipment to go faster. But I certainly enjoyed cycling the most because I didn't do much of it in high school, and I got a bike in 2014, 2015, and that's when I started cycling regularly. So I saw these vast improvements, and I think a lot of people do. You go from 20 k's an hour to 33 k's an hour for an average ride, and I mean, you're covering a lot more distance in 3 hours then. So it's, and also like upgrading tech and stuff. It's like boys with their toys.
Yeah.
Going to
with running, all you can do is get new socks and shoes, maybe
socks, shoes, and
tighter pants. Yeah, like
and you find a new remedy for blisters.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
What's your biggest injury? Have you got like, you know, an injury? Have you ever like suffered a knee damage, or have you, you know, maybe is it just blisters? Well, I say just blisters, but blisters are terrible.
Yeah, blisters for some people are, I mean, they're debilitating. It depends where you get your blister. For heavier folks, blisters are really, I mean, they can be awful. So I think anyone who's raced in the top of the amateur leagues has run themselves bloody because you don't put socks on before the run, because everything is about seconds. You just want to save time. So you get out the swim. Your shoes are already on the bike with elastics. You're running with your bike. You jump on your bike. You put your shoes on while you're cycling already. Then when you're getting off, it's the same thing. You leave your shoes on the bike. You get off. You're running barefoot. You just put your feet straight into shoes and you go on your 10K run as fast as you can. So, I mean, blisters then are the least of your worries because now you've just run your feet raw. Biggest injury I've ever had, I've kind of fractured bones in my feet after that first standard distance triathlon I did, just from no conditioning with running. I mean, we've all pulled muscles. I've hurt my knee a couple of times. I've never broken, touch wood. The universe.
So you've never like come off a bike or anything?
I
like
have,
that?
but
no
only roasties.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, lost skin, lost lycra, that sort of thing. My biggest setback was I got put in hospital with septicemia in 2019, and so I was in hospital for a month, and so that was a long journey back. But that wasn't triathlon related exactly. But that's the biggest thing I've had to come back from. And
is that something you still suffer from?
I mean, I still suffer from kind of.
Does it lowers your blood pressure as well? Huh?
No, it didn't. It didn't
so
affect any of that for
okay.
me. But it gave me pneumonia in my lungs, and the antibiotics could only do so much. Where they cleared the one lung, but the infection stayed in my right lung and broke out of my lung into my chest cavity. So they had to operate, and they ended up removing the lining of my right lung, throw it against the wall like spaghetti, and seal me back up. And that's. I thought that would affect my breathing, but it hasn't really. I think it's just the body went through a lot.
Was this before you started?
No, this was in 2019.
Okay, so you do know, you can have told a difference, you know, before and after.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. So I think I'm getting back to where I was beforehand. But yeah, it's been a long journey coming back. Yeah.
So you mentioned obviously running, you know, putting on your cycling shoes while they're on the bike, you know, to have a quick transition, you know, from swimming to cycling. is that something you practice, to do it quicker? Because most people might just be like you, focus on running, swimming, cycling. But is it something that you quickly practice, like even just split seconds? Because obviously that's what matters.
I think the people that are good at it practice. A lot of coaches will suggest practice. Not everyone practices then. A lot of people just use the races as practice, which is not a bad thing. If you have a lot of races, a lot of opportunities to do short, not easy, but short and cheap races to do, not Ironman branded, because that's a couple of grand an entry. You can do them and you can practice in your garden though. And I don't think people do that enough. It's one of the small things. It's like practicing technique or doing abs in the gym, where people just don't do it enough. You should, but you don't. So it's like practicing taking a wetsuit off as well. And these things, you see people, beginners, getting stuck in their wetsuits, either not being able to find a zip or in transition not knowing what to put on next just because they haven't drummed it into themselves. And it's simple things that the people that are really good at it have focused on and have practiced. So, practice pays off.
I want to ask, 'cause obviously you more in the endurance space, obviously gym rats, whatever, just have a watch to measure how many calories they're burning so they know how much they can eat. But, in terms of accuracy, these Garmin watches, I think you got a Garmin there, obviously.
This is a Polar.
So accuracy-wise, how accurate are they? Have you had discussions with other people where they say, Apple Watch isn't as accurate as this, or, it's overreading your calories burned in that session? Do you have any insight in that?
It's all within a range. So if
it's inaccurately accurate at the end of the day.
Yeah. So and each brand measures slightly different as well. So I've got a Garmin bike computer, and if I go for a ride, I still press start on my Polar because it measures my overall day and my overall fatigue, where the Garmin bike computer is only measuring that session. So I have both of them. I don't watch my watch then. I'll watch the bike computer. But at the end of the session, the calories are different, but maybe by 30 or 40 calories. So, it's not...
It's negligible.
Also, we're not necessarily weight weenies in that we want to eat the exact number of egg whites or cream of rice, Devon, or that. We're not measuring that. We should, and I think we'd be a lot better if we did.
So, in terms of calories, do you see, I'm losing too much weight, I'm, not eating enough, I don't want to waste away muscle, because obviously, I want to be as light as possible, but also I want to be as strong as possible, have that endurance because of the muscles.
So, you'll feel it in a long session if you're not fueled correctly. We always want to prepare ourselves for a session by eating enough to get to the end of the session. But we still supplement ourselves during a session. And I think and by we, I mean the average triathlete who's now focusing too much on the weight numbers will start reducing how much they eat during a session, which is possibly the worst thing you can do. You need to rather overfuel than underfuel. You're not going to put on kgs if you have one too many gels, or one too many bars. Rather, there are too many people that just go on water, where sure they might be on a banting diet or something like
then
that.
You got no more electrolytes. All of that just gets flushed out when you're sweating.
It's not just that session, because you'll go home and you'll eat. You'll probably binge. And then the next day, you've been in a deficit for so long, your body's playing catch up. But now you have to go for a long run. And so you wonder why you have a shit run. And it's because your body is like fighting for survival, ultimately. And what happens then, your immune system takes a knock, and then you fall ill, and you wonder why you're sick. So fueling is, people often say, it's a mix between transition is the fourth discipline or eating is your fourth discipline. But yeah, fuel is not taken on correctly enough by enough people. So what I would do for, let's say, a long ride, you can call it a 4-hour ride. You're going to be on the bike for at least 4 hours. I'd have a big bowl of oats with some peanut butter or something in it, a little bit of fat to sustain yourself, but mainly carbs. Have that an hour before I get going. I'll leave home. I generally ride from home, and I've got 2 or even 3 bottles of drink on me. I take a supplement called Morton. I'll have 3 bottles of that, and then I'll have a couple of Morton gels on me. And you want to sip on that juice constantly. You want to take a gel or a bar even from 40 minutes in. You're already topping up.
So it's almost every 40 minutes or every hour?
It depends on the intensity.
Yeah.
So yeah, between 40 minutes and an hour is a good rule of thumb. And it's just making sure your glycogen levels don't drop too much. And then as soon as you finish, it's a protein shake, etc. It's pretty standard stuff. It's not rocket science. And often people overthink it. They try and find new things that no one's thought of, and
it's impossible.
It is impossible. I mean, there are people who get paid a lot of money to find out these things, and you on YouTube at home are not going to discover the secret.
And what do you think separates? These, obviously it's exposure, it's more frequent events, but what do you think separates South African triathletes to the international or overseas, let's say American athletes?
I think it's difficult to say. I think we're just a bit different. Every nationality obviously has their differences that they're brought up with. The Americans have got a lot of triathlons to choose from. It's a much bigger country, etc., and they've been doing triathlon there for probably about as long as South Africans, but it's been a lot more popular there for longer. Maybe just accessibility to various things like tri-specific clubs, but there's no excuse now. We have more than enough clubs here, more than enough races to do, and more than enough competitors in our sort of population percentage-wise. We've got a lot of world champions from South Africa in the age group, not so much pro level. There are a few, but we do well. South Africa is up there, definitely. Okay. Yeah.
And now hopping on your tri bike, where do you go ride? I mean, you say you leave from home, but sometimes, going through Bryanston or going through these dangerous roads with taxis and everything. Obviously, people know maybe the Cradle, that kind of place, those kind of places. Is there tracks that you can go, like indoor tracks, or where do you usually train?
I wish we had indoor facilities, but we've got a couple of options. The Cradle's the main one for anyone living in Joburg. So I live in Bryanston, and I roll out my door down William Nicol, but again, it's at like just before or at 5 a.m. So there are not many cars on the road. Most of the cars on the road will be people driving to the Cradle. So they've got a sense of what's around them, or cyclists at least, and they know how much space to give a cyclist. So that's fine. And then by the time you get in the Cradle, it's again not many cars in the cars.
So you ride from Bryanston to Cradle?
Yeah, all the way straight to the Cradle. It's maybe half an hour to 40 minutes to where I'll meet the team, and then we'll start together there, and we'll do a couple of laps around the Cradle, or we find various routes. And there's a nice big shoulder for most of the way, and the cars give you space out there. It's kind of known as where cyclists go. So you don't just go for a random drive on a Saturday morning there. There are people that live there and who don't necessarily like cyclists, but there are rarely any incidents out there in the Cradle. There are other routes that guys take. During the week, there's a ride called the Engine to Engine. There's at that William Nicol main road crossing where the Bryanston Virgin Active is, that engine there. And it's been going on for years, maybe decades, where the guys start there and they head down towards Randburg, down Main towards Randburg, kind of find their way through Linden and Greenside, over through to Oxford and through Rosebank and back through Sandton. It's a 40k loop, and they do that every day of the week. And again, start before 5, so there aren't many cars on the road at that time. So it's again fairly safe, but as soon as the roads get busy, you're kind of playing with your life.
Yeah. And it's time after 6 almost, so you get out there, at least you're safe for an hour.
Yeah, you're safe for an hour.
Then you play with your life for 2 hours after that.
And then you have to be very vigilant about cars, jumping robots, and staying hard left, and just watching out for cars.
Yeah. So now that's obviously the cycling training. Swimming, do you go to dams? Obviously there's pools, but you can either go and, let's say, do a half Ironman in the ocean. How do you prepare for that in Joburg?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, a lot of guys, they'll do their first open water swim in a race in the ocean, and it's not advised, but sometimes that's like all you can do. Maybe there's not enough time in a week to get to an open water facility. The best we've got, again, is in the Cradle. There's a dam there, a Cradle Moon. We've also got Emmarentia, where if shit hasn't flowed in, then it's fairly safe to swim in. Apart from the duck shit, I've swum there a few times. It's cool. That's about it open water wise. And the only thing you want to do there is practice sighting and being comfortable in a big body of water. Otherwise, the pool's just fine. Hey, that's what majority of triathletes would do. Just laps and laps in a pool. I wish we had more Olympic-sized pools, just a 50-meter.
Yeah, you have to go to like a university or something to find those.
Yeah, there are a couple in Joburg, but not many.
Yeah.
And then running, there are a few. Again, there's UJ for the track and Ramsig for like a tartan track, but it's not necessarily ideal to train on all the time. It's quite a hard surface. It's unkind to your joints, but some people will swear by it. We train on a grass field. It's just George Lee Park, where Milk Bar is. And we run around the field there. Sometimes we'll mix it up and go through the neighborhood a bit, but we do a set little route so no one gets lost. And everyone kind of keeps passing each other. And then, just Joburg's quite nice in that our neighborhoods, although not always the safest, we do have lots of sheltered neighborhoods that you can run through quite safely.
Yeah. And now you've got a triathlon you're preparing for. Let's say it's 4 weeks before the triathlon. What is your training frequency in terms of, how often you're swimming, cycling, per day, running? How does it work? Let's say 4 weeks before. Obviously not in that much detail, but are you cycling, swimming, running every day, every second day?
I think for a professional, you can design a program to do each discipline every single day. It's you're going to have to be quite a conditioned athlete to be able to run every day, especially. Cycling every day is not as hard on your legs. And swimming is the least the least tough on your body. So I know
most people say if you've got an injury, go swim, it'll help you.
Yeah, there's no gravity, and you can just go a little bit easier, and it's really easy to just move through the water, and it's quite relaxing then, if you can swim and you're not drowning. But it's I think for the average, and I'm just going to speak as like the average age grouper, I think 2 or 3 swims a week is more than enough. Looking for a half Ironman, 3 or 4 runs is probably your upper end. Cycling 2 or 3, and it's some short hard sessions and some long easy sessions.
And would you usually split that up, like a run in the morning, a cycle in the evening, or would you maybe do
if someone's got time? If they've got time and they're willing to put in that amount of effort into their training. And I go on the belief of not many rest days, but more active recovery. So like an easy swim for me is a rest day. So you just go and do a nice, easy, I know this is going to sound to the average person, but like you go do a 3K swim. It's just nice and easy. You're done under an hour. And
so you say 3K is easy. What's difficult in terms of a swim for you?
Like a 4K set could be tough if you're doing specific intervals. But if you're just doing a straight swim, try not to count the laps. You let your watch count the laps. Just think about various things. Just get lost in the process, and maybe tap off your pace a lot. Again, I go on the aerobic thing where if you can breathe and have a conversation, you're going at a good aerobic pace.
Yeah. I think that's the problem with people. They think, you know, if it's a rest day, in terms of gym, in terms of running, anything, you need to be sitting on the couch with your feet up. Obviously, that there's time and there's merit in that, but active recovery, just going walking your dogs, loosening up the lactic acid, and not just sitting there, becoming more stiff sometimes.
Yeah, I find a day of doing absolutely nothing, I start to drive myself up the wall a little bit. You get a little antsy, especially if you're used to 2 sessions a day. You don't know what to do with yourself all of a sudden. You tend to overeat a bit because your body is still burning, because you're used to doing those 2 sessions a day. So the day of doing absolutely nothing, you need to be quite strict. Whereas if you do an active recovery day, you're still getting something done. You're still moving your body, like you say. Stretching's good. Walking your dog's good. I wouldn't go for a run. I wouldn't. A coffee ride, a nice easy hour ride with your mates is good for active recovery as well. Anything to flush the legs of your lactic acid, prevent some stiffness. There are lots of ways to go about it. Much like diets, various diets work for various people, and you can make pretty much any diet work for you if you dedicate it enough. So, every coach has got a different way about coaching their athletes, and no one's wrong, and no one is absolutely right. Obviously, a coach may work for a specific athlete, and that training plan with that athlete will create an Olympian, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best for everyone. It's very open-ended, so it's about finding the right fit for you. And I think making mistakes along the way is the best thing, because you learn. And life's a process, and you're only going to find out what works for you if you make some mistakes.
Once you go through what doesn't work for you. In terms of running, because I recently just bought running shoes, and obviously, as you say, everybody is different, but for you, or even just the general person starting out, would you go for more cushioning in the sole? Would you go for, obviously it depends on your goals, but on a race day, would you wear a smaller sole, faster shoe, maybe carbon plated? Those are the kind of things obviously more professionals do, where general runners will just go and buy the nicest looking Nikes.
I think for like your top end pros now, I think you're silly to not have a carbon plated shoe. So you definitely want something with a lot more stiffness, a bit more spring. You're going to be running more front-footed because you're leaning more. You're trying to carry your momentum, and the carbon obviously helps with that. It's, again, to everyone's preference. With cushioning, some people have pronation and different running styles. A running specialist is probably at like the sweatshop in Dunkeld. They'd be able to tell you exactly what suits your stride. And they put a pair of shoes on you and they make you run up and down the sidewalk, and they'll tell you if it's right or wrong for you. And more often than not, they're right about it. They got me onto a brand called Hoka, it's got a lot of cushioning, and it looks like it's just a really soft, comfortable everyday shoe. But it's helped me a lot with preventing injuries. And I think it is because of the cushioning, because I'm quite a front foot striker. So the more cushioning up front, the better for me. I used to run in a Nike structure, which, because I'm quite flat-footed, it lifted my arch up a bit. And that worked for some time, but then I started getting different injuries because I started running more front-footed. So then it wasn't working for me anymore. So I wouldn't advise someone who's running a 2.5 hour half marathon. I wouldn't advise a carbon plated shoe, because if you're on your feet for that amount of time, that carbon plate, you're running at a speed that you're not benefiting from the carbon plate, and it might be creating a bit more shock up your leg. And so you're doing damage. It's not helping you at all. So you're better off then with maybe a softer, more cushioned shoe.
You by trade are a copywriter, and now you say you are transitioning into becoming a full-time triathlete. how does that transition work, and what are you going to change in terms of training? Obviously, now you're just going to maybe obviously be able to focus solely on that.
So I've got no idea. This is all very new. I got a very nice offer from a sponsor of mine. He prefers to call it support rather than sponsor. We're creating a venture together, and the venture and company is going to aid me in becoming a full-time triathlon-focused human. So I am a coach currently. I'll continue to coach, but it allows me to train more, where at the moment I'm maxing out at 19, 20 hours a week. That's a big training week for me, because you're still working full-time and coaching and
Trying to have a social life.
Having a good relationship, just and trying to get enough sleep in. So, I mean, it's a busy life, and just knocking out that 40-hour work week of a copywriter, or anyone in the ad industry will know, it could be a much longer than 40-hour work week. Knocking that out will allow me to just recover more and slowly build the hours up, not just go straight into a 30-hour training.
And also have a little bit less stress.
Yeah, absolutely.
Less cortisol going through your body, being able to recover better, less lactic acid.
I don't think people talk about cortisol levels enough. Hey, that I think it's a killer. That stress, and you don't realize the stress you've got when you're trying to meet a deadline all the time, and that stress just kills your recovery, and it's not the best.
In many aspects, because, the more cortisol is released in your body, the more estrogen that comes into your body, the less you're going to be able to recover, the more muscle breakdown there's going to be, the later you're going to stay up worrying about it at night, so you're going to get less sleep. So it's just like a domino effect. The moment there's stress, it affects everything. You might lose appetite, or you might overeat, or you might do certain you might be thinking about it while you're training and not focusing on training correctly. All of those things is just from stress.
Yeah, just from stress. And I think stress also, then just that domino effect, also you start questioning, okay, how much do I actually give a damn about this? Because now, are you putting training ahead of work? And you can't afford to do that if you've got a full-time job. So I think with the alleviation of that stress being removed, that could be the difference for me. So I'm really looking forward to this year. Yeah, I'm not going to be a pro. I won't compete against pros, but I'll definitely try and improve as much as I can. Maybe at the end of the year we can reassess that, and we'll choose a race that would suit me. But it's an exciting year.
So what's the process now of when is the last day as a copywriter, or do you know that yet, or do you still need to put in notice, that kind of stuff?
I've put in notice. Work has been, and my current boss have been wonderful. They're very excited for me. The amount I talk about triathlon and share with people at work, I think it's a relief that they no longer have to hear about triathlon. So
just go.
Yeah, just please, just take extra leave. So I'll finish up at the end of Jan, and then it's about aligning, kind of finding some goals with my partner, and I've already got races down as what I want to do.
When is your first proposed race?
Sure, that's there's actually Gauteng Champs at the end of this month, so that first weekend that I'm off will be the first race. But again, that's just the first race of the season, and it's just a qualifier for SA Champs. I'm not discounting Gauteng Champs at all. It's a great race. CGT's been hosting it for years and years. It's moved from Germiston now to Cradle Moon with the Red Hub event. I've done a Red Hub before. It's well organized and cool, and it's a great event for beginners. And anyone with a TSA, Triathlon South Africa license, will automatically go into the running for representing Gauteng. And then SA Champs is in March in PE. This is for standard distance, that Olympic distance. And then from then I'll stay down in PE for a couple of weeks, because that will be my first half Ironman of the year. and I'm looking to try and do 5 this year, which is a big year.
Mm.
But I challenged one of the other coaches in our team, Nick, who is an old man, and I challenged him to Ironman next year. So I'm still going to do full Ironman next year. It will be my first full Ironman, and hopefully I'll have enough training from this year then to give him a run. You know.
Awesome. Well, Haydn, I wish you all the best for Gauteng Champs, and obviously all the rest of the races, and all the training, and going into this full time. So hopefully everyone that's watching you will follow you and follow your journey, and see your improvements, and hopefully that little bit of less stress will get you beating the old man next year for the full Ironman.
Thanks, Jesse.
Of course, and thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Awesome, and thank you guys for watching.
I'm sorry I didn't bring someone to have a hot debate with like my brother did.
It's fine. I know. I can see the personality differences.
What's the first difference that you see?
You definitely... Devon's definitely more confrontational, maybe. Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But he's not negatively confrontational.
No, not at all. He definitely knows what he's talking about.
It's just he's confrontational in the sense that at least you always know where you stand with him, so which is good.
Yeah, that's true.
Dev, if you're watching this, but maybe both of you come. Maybe actually, Devon asked me once to do a leg of one of those quick sprint triathlons or whatever.
Was it recently?
Yeah, it was in December, I think.
I watched him do that. So I was doing the same race.
What did he do? A run?
No, he did the cycle.
Actually, I saw a photo of him with his tight shirt on at the bike.
And it was the day after one of his shows.
Yes.
He chose to wear white shorts.
So his tan just came off.
So the tan was just in his crotch. It was,
People must have been looking at him like, surely this guy doesn't do triathlons.
Yeah, they did. And then obviously in pure Devon nature, he walked around shirtless. It was also
what was the day after the show?
It was 14 degrees and raining, and he was still shirtless. So he had a lot of people turning their heads because you got a lot of scrawny, weight weenie triathletes
That's
walking
true.
around, and then this vanilla gorilla walking around.
What's yours? What's your nickname?
It's the albino cappuccino.
The albino cappuccino.
Yeah, that's what I go by.
Well, albino cappuccino, bro. Thank you.
Thanks, Jesse.
Have you ever met Miss Lindy? She's a gal with the bright red hair.